So stages of attachment. Now the specification requires you to know the stages of attachment identified by Schaefer, and in particular multiple attachments as well. So there are 4 stages of attachment: asocial, indiscriminate, specific and multiple. Now you might see them named as different things in different textbooks, and the mark scheme will be aware of certain stages can be referred to as different names, so please don't worry if a mark scheme says a different thing to the one that you've been taught. But for this video and the way that I've taught you, it's asocial, indiscriminate, specific and multiple attachment. So asocial is during the first few weeks of a baby's life, and they behave in the same way to objects and to humans. However, they do show some preference for familiar adults, and they appear to be happier in the presence of other humans, but mostly there is no distinctive interaction between an object and an adult. Indiscriminate is between the ages of 2 to 7 months, and babies now do recognise and prefer familiar adults and are beginning to show more preference for people over objects. They do not yet display any separation or stranger anxiety, so they don't show any distress when a caregiver leaves the room or is separated from them, and they don't show any wariness of adults. It's called indiscriminate because attachment and behaviour is the same to all. Specific attachment is around about 7 months old, so now babies have formed a specific attachment to their primary attachment figure, and in most cases, in 65% of those cases, it's the biological mother. However, it can be any member of the family or not a member of the family. It's the person that will respond to the baby's needs with the most skill. They do start to show separation anxiety, so when they are separated from the adult they do show separation anxiety, and they are beginning to demonstrate stranger anxiety towards unfamiliar adults, so they show distress, uneasiness towards people that they aren't familiar with. Multiple attachments is by the age of 1 year, so babies have now formed several attachments to different adults within their lives, and research suggests that happens to 29% of babies. They form their secondary attachment within 1 month of forming their specific attachment. So after they've formed the specific attachment, about a third will go on to form a secondary attachment within a month of doing so. Now, if we look at a key piece of research by Schaefer and Emerson in 1964, the aim was to investigate the stages of attachment. So they did this by having 60 babies from Glasgow. They were mostly from working class background, and they were visited in their home every month for a year, so a longitudinal study, and at the age of 18 months old. They measured separation and stranger anxiety. Separation anxiety was measured by asking mothers about how their child or children behaved during periods of separation, and stranger anxiety was measured by asking mothers questions about their children's anxiety in response to unfamiliar adults. They found that 50% of babies showed separation anxiety between the ages of 25 weeks and 32 weeks, and that specific attachment was usually with the mother. They concluded that attachment tended to be with the caregiver who was most interactive and sensitive to the infant signals, and it wasn't necessarily with the person that they spent the most amount of time with. It was the person that dealt and provided the better quality of care. So, an example of a question that you might be asked about on the AA1: name the 3 stages in the development of attachment identified by Schaefer. 3 marks, nice easy 3 marker, just simply bullet point the 3 of the 4 stages. Don't need to give me any description, it's just asking you to name, so simple, just give 3 of the 4 stages. If we move on to evaluation, so we've got supporting a strength of it is that it was a longitudinal study, which reduces individual differences and any confounding variables, as the same children are being observed over multiple time periods. So the same children were observed and visited every month for a year and then at 18 months. So there isn't any individual differences between comparing a child at 7 months as opposed to a child at 2 months. It's the same child, so we can't say whether it reduces any participant and individual differences. We've got some conflicting evidence, so it doesn't really apply to collectivist cultures. So the timing of multiple attachments is different between individualistic and collectivist cultures due to differences in child rearing practices. So in collectivist cultures, they tend to raise the child in more of a group setting, so therefore multiple attachments do develop from the outset, as opposed to them developing by a year in individualistic cultures. So it might be that it is culturally biased, this research. We can't apply it to all cultures. It certainly is ethnocentric because it was only done in Glasgow. It does have high external validity though, because the observations were being made by the parent, not the observer. So therefore babies behave naturally. They weren't aware that there was a stranger, an observer observing them, so therefore high external validity. However, there are problems with studying the asocial stage. So it might not be that children are unsocial and don't have attachments to humans. It's just that they're immobile, so it actually might be that we're not actually assessing correctly, and it's difficult to observe behaviour that we would associate with having an attachment to a human as opposed to an object. It's just that babies are born at a very underdeveloped stage. In terms of an evaluation question that you might get asked, you might get discussed stages of attachment as identified by Schaefer. So discuss, again, outline and evaluate. Please do not just do all of your AO1, you are being asked to evaluate in this 16 marker. Now discuss even means, so how I discuss it is I do my AO1 paragraphs, so one paragraph on the 4 stages and the description of them, and then a separate AO1 paragraph on the research by Schaefer and Emerson. I would then move on to my evaluation, so 3 to 4 Peel paragraphs. If we can get any issues and debates, for example being culturally biased in there, then please do so. Try to embed it throughout and use key terminology from other areas of the specification to show the examiner that you are being synoptic.